Hey everybody, this is Mr. Regner, and you are here for the Unit 7 review. Part 1. So, as we review Part 1, we're going to take a look at the study guide, and I'll be completing this study guide, and hopefully you can kind of follow along and help yourself prepare for our Unit 7 test. All right, so I am hopefully going to use a pen that will be easy for you to see. So as I look at this, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing on the video, let me zoom in a little bit, bump that up, there we go. So for part 1, we begin by writing down an integer that represents the situation. So hopefully you remember learning about some of our vocabulary words that represent our integers. So in taking a look at number 1, it says you climb 12 feet down a hillside. That word down hopefully recognizes or means something to you in your head, and you're going to think it's a negative integer, and you'd be right. That is negative 12. Number 2 says you save $15 on an item for sale. Well, you're saving money. That money stays in your pocket. That is a positive integer, and it would be 15. That is pretty basic stuff, but just make sure you're very cautious. If I forgot a negative sign here, it would be wrong. Obviously, because that's not negative 12 anymore, it'd be positive 12. Let's move on to number 3. We take that same idea, same philosophy, and apply it to number 3. It's looking for a scenario that means negative 5. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at A, B, C, and D and try to figure out what that sentence represents. So the company's profit on a skateboard is $5 less than its profit on a football. This sounds confusing because I see profit and I see less, but it's $5 less, right? They're making $5 less. That is a negative 5. The team gained 5 yards. That's a positive 5. There are 5 times as many soccer balls. I think on your paper it says as many. So 5 times as many is a positive 5. The social studies quiz has 5 problems more. That's a positive 5, right? So we see pretty clearly that A is our only option. Taking a look at number 4. Now on number 4, this is going to be maybe helpful for some people. You will have the ability to write all over your test, all over your paper. You'll have extra scrap paper even to use. So if you want to make a number line to help yourself out, maybe I want to pretend like I'm Jessica and I'm plotting -1 and -10 on a number line. I could do that. And sometimes seeing that visual will help you to answer correctly. So I'm going to kind of make my own little makeshift number line similar to what you may do on your test. So there's my number line. If I plot -1 and -10, I know 0 would be here, -1 would be next to it, and then -10 would be like way down the line, right? And there you can kind of see that a little better now. All right, so it says Jessica should plot -1 to the left of -10 because -1 is less than -10. Well, I plotted -10 to the left of -1, so that can't be, right? Should plot -1 to the left? No, it can't be B either. It says Jessica should plot -10 to the left. Well, now they're singing my tune because I put -10 to the left of -1. Let's check out the reason. Because -10 is less than -1 or -10 is greater than -1. Well, I remember that the further left we go, the littler the numbers get. To the left is littler. So -10 is actually less than -1. So C is my answer and the only answer I could pick. See the logical thought that I went through there to answer that one? This could be tough because they're so similar. Like if you look at these words, so many of them are similar to one another. We really have to be very picky in reading number 4. Let's take a look at number 5. Number 5 says point A and point B are placed on a number line. Point A is located at -25 and point B is 6 less than point A. Which statement about point B is true? I'm looking here, hopefully you're seeing that whole question on the video. Let me give myself a little more room here. There we go. All right, so again, there's nothing stopping me from making my own little number line here, right? So point A is at -25. I'm going to plot -25. And then point B, this is going to be A, by the way, is 6 less. If I'm going less, I'm getting smaller. I'm going to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jumps to the left. This is where point B would be. So let me think about what point B would be. Here's negative 25, negative 26, negative 27, negative 28, negative 29, negative 30, negative 31. Now I can label all of them in between there if I want to, but this is just a visual to help me answer this question. Let me look at my options. A says it's located at negative 19. I know right away that's not right, and I know the letter D cannot be right. So letters B and C both say it's located at negative 31. Letter B says, and is to the right of point A. Well, here's point A, and here's to the right of point A, over here. I put point B not to the right, but to the left. So it can't be to the right, it's got to be letter C, which says it's to the left of point A. Easy peasy, but again, logical thought goes into it. How about number 6? It says the summit of a mountain is 50 kilometers above the ocean floor. If the ocean floor has an elevation of 25 kilometers below sea level, which statement describes the elevation of sea level and the summit? So I'm going to make a little drawing here, and this is going to look like a drawing, but also kind of like a vertical number line, which is what it's going to be. So I have the summit of my mountain, right? So the peak of my mountain here, the top of it is going to be up here. That is 50 kilometers above the ocean floor. The ocean floor is going to be down here, and I'll call that ocean floor. Hopefully that's coming through in the video for you. And then I have sea level, which is somewhere in the middle, so I'm going to put little ocean waves and label this sea level. So the summit, I guess, is the word that I'm using here, summit. I almost wrote peak. How silly of me. All right, so the summit, sea level, and ocean floor. The summit is 50 kilometers above the ocean floor. So I know from here to here is 50 kilometers. If the ocean floor has an elevation of 25 kilometers below sea level, so here's sea level, right? This is negative 25 below sea level, right? So if this whole thing is 50, this is negative 25. What is this distance here between sea level and the summit? Well, that would be a positive 25. Makes sense? So the total distance is 50. Below sea level is 25. Above sea level is 25 because 25 and 25 equal 50. Let me look at my options now that I kind of have made sense of this. A says the elevation of sea level is 0 kilometers and the elevation of the summit is 25 kilometers. Well, if this is 0, this would be 25. So yeah, A could be right. Let me look at my other options. The elevation of sea level is 25 kilometers, and the elevation of the summit is negative 25. Is there any way this could be negative? No, cannot happen. The elevation of sea level is negative 25, and the elevation of the summit is 25. Well, negative 25 was way down here, so this could not be negative 25. The elevation of sea level is 0, and the elevation of the summit is 50. Well, no, if sea level's here, this is only 50 from the ocean floor. So the elevation of the summit couldn't be 50 kilometers. So that can't be right. So only one answer there, and that is A. That's page 1 of our study guide. We're moving right along into page 2 and number 7. When you look at number 7, there it is in the video, it says Sharmi recorded the average temperatures for 6 months. She will display them on a number line. The temperatures are shown in the table. On the number line, which month's temperature will be between March's and April's temperatures, and select all that apply. So once again, I have the ability here to create my own number line. So I'm going to pretend like I am Sharmi here, making my number line. All right, so if I have all of my points here, it looks like my low point is negative 30, my high point is 16. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with negative 30. Maybe I'll put negative 20. I'm just going to go by tens. Negative 10, 0, 10, and 20. So I'm just going to throw my points on here, and I'm going to label them just by like the first letter of the month, just to make it easier. And for May and March, I'll have to make that clearer. So negative 10 would be here, and that is going to be December. January is negative 30. That's January. Negative 16 is February. I'm going to mark that like right about here. Right? It's about negative 16. March is negative 20. Okay, so I'm going to mark that as MAR. April is 10. So I'm going to mark that with an A. And May is 16, which is going to be like right about here. I'm going to mark that as MAY. So I want to know what is between March and April. Okay, so right here is April. Right here is March. If I look at this, I just did all the work for myself. I have February and December between March and April. May and January would obviously be on the outside. They are not between. So I mark February and December. Easy peasy, as long as I make my number line. Let me move on now to numbers 8 and 9. Both of these ask me to find the absolute value. Now, I could make a number line and I could count the number of spaces between that number and 0. But if I know about absolute value, I know 18 is 18 spaces from 0. And negative 7 is 7 spaces from 0. Basically just taking these numbers inside that absolute value bar, and I'm just changing it into a positive value no matter what. So 18 is 18, and 7 is 7. That should be like 2 simple, easy points for you on your test. Take a look at number 10. It gives me a nice number line here, and it says, what's the absolute value of the point shown on the number line? Well, the absolute value is always going to be the number of the distance, or the number of spaces from the point to 0. So I could literally just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and count the spaces. The distance here is 5 units. So the absolute value of that distance is 5. Now, I wouldn't say negative 5 because absolute value is always positive. All right, so let's move on now to numbers 11, 12, and 13, and 14. All right, so for this one, my copy here got a little bit jumbled up, and I don't appreciate that, but your copy looks much cleaner. It says, write the ordered pair that matches. So for point A, if I look at my coordinate plane, point A is here. I always go X value first, side to side first before I go up and down. So point A, I'm going over 1 and down 3. That's over positive 1 and then down negative 3. So my ordered pair here is positive 1, negative 3. Point B is here. I go over 7, up 1. That's 7, 1. Point C is located here. I go over negative 3 and up 1. That's negative 3, 1. And then point D, it's a little bit hard to see on my copy just because of the way it printed off so funky. But I go over negative 6 and down negative 2. That's negative 6, negative 2. Again, if you can plot these points, this is pretty easy stuff. And if we know anything about our quadrants, we know this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So the next question is going to be super easy. It says, which point on the graph is in quadrant 3? Let me see. Here's quadrant 3. There's point D. So it is D. All right, so page 2 is over and out. We're moving on now to page 3 of our study guide, on to number 16. This again is our study guide for part 1. So we are, moving right along. This is good timing. Take a look at 16. It says, which statement is true about the points represented by negative 8, negative 2, and 5, negative 2, and choose all that apply. So I want to look at my options here, and the fact that it says choose all that apply tells me there could be more than one answer. So letter A says the points are located above the x-axis. I don't know. But what I can do is use a coordinate plane to graph these, and this is going to make it so much easier. I'm making my own really simple coordinate plane over here, but on your test, you'll have access to a paper with blank coordinate planes where you could easily do this. So negative 8, negative 2, I know I'm going to go negative 8 down negative 2. It's going to be like somewhere over here. Okay, and then 5, negative 2, I'm going to go over 5 down to 2. That's going to be 5, negative 2. All right, so if I know that both of those are there, I know this is my x-axis, this is my y. are the points located above the x-axis, and they're not, they're below. The points can be connected by a vertical line. Well, if I connect these, that's actually a horizontal line, so that's not true. The points are the same distance from the x-axis. Here's the x-axis. This point is 2 away from the x-axis, and this point is 2 away from the x-axis, so letter C is correct. And then the points are the same distance from the y-axis. Let me look at it. This is 5 away, this is 8 away. So no, letter D doesn't work. Now again, it does say choose all that apply, and I think that's because on your test, it's actually going to have more than one answer. All right, so be aware of that, but on the study guide, only one correct answer. Look at number 17. In the coordinate plane, what is the distance between -2, 9 and -10, 9? Now we could, again, draw these points out on a coordinate plane and then count the number of steps between them, or we could use our tip that we know about. If we have a number that is the same, a value that's the same, like our y value, we can then find the difference of the value of the x, which is not the same. So I take my bigger number, which is -2, and I find the difference, or I subtract -10. Now if I have a negative or a minus a negative, that's really saying the same thing as positive, right? So I really have -2 plus 8, but if we think about this, -2, -10, the difference is going to be 8. Okay, -2 plus 10, that's going to land me at +8. Think about that on a number line. Again, if you need to draw a number line out, if you want to plot those points, you certainly can for your test. Look at number 18. What is the distance between 5, -3, and -4, -3? Same thing. I have -3 and -3 as my y values. So I find the difference then of my x values by taking my larger number, 5, and then subtracting my smaller number. This is 5 minus a -4. That's the same as saying 5 plus 4. So 5 plus 4 is 9 units. Again, I could draw that out if I want to, but hopefully we don't really need to. Look at number 19. The grid here shows the distance of 3 points. What is the distance in units between points A and C? So we don't even care about point B. Sorry, point B. It's just a fact. So here's points C and A. If I can just look at this, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 units between them, and that's all I need to do. Let's wrap it up here with number 20 for part A, and I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. There we go, so you can see the whole thing. Now it says 4 points are graphed on the coordinate grid. Which ordered pair does not appear to be represented by one of these points? Well, let's take a look at it. Letter A, we have -5 halves and -1 1/2. Well, 5 halves to me is tricky. So I'm going to turn that improper fraction into a mixed number. And I know 2 goes into 5 2 times, right? So this is really saying 2 1/2. And 1/2. So if I have -2 1/2, I go over 1, 2, and 1/2, right? And then down -1 1/2. That would be right here between -1 and -2 is -1 1/2. It appears then that this would be point A. And I'm going to label that point A, which I'm now looking, and you probably can't see that I did that on the video, but I did. All right, so A appears to be there. We want the one that does not appear. Look at letter B. It says -1 1/2 and 3/2. Well, 3/2, that's going to be 1 1/2, right? So I have -1 1/2 and 1 1/2. So let me go over -1 1/2 up 1 1/2. That appears to be point B. Here I have 3/2. Again, that's going to be 1 1/2, 2. Let me go over 1 1/2 and up 2. This appears to be point C. And then I have letter D, 3 1/2, and then -2 1/2. Let me go over here to my origin. I go over 3 1/2. There's about 3 1/2. And then I go down -2 1/2. 1, 2 1/2. So point D would be right here, but it appears that point D is not actually there. I had to create it myself. So point D is actually my answer. So that is part 1 of our study guide. Make sure you review this carefully because all those questions are just like our questions that we're going to see on our unit test.